Hello everyone, I am Saumya and I'm a PhD student at the CSIR National Institute of Oceanography in Goa. I came to experience the oceans for the first time in 2017 on board research vessel Sindhu Sadhana. I was prepared for all of it, you see. I had seen Pirates of the Caribbean, all 5 films, and the Titanic. Every night in my dreams, I see you, I feel you. How exciting, right? But my first meal, and I was stooped over the toilet, the seasickness had hit really hard. But it got alright, and I survived to tell you about the microscopic world that thrives in the oceans. When we go out on the cruise, we get to see these beautiful dolphins, the colorful fish, and the sea snakes. But the tiny organisms that keep this entire system up and running aren't even visible with the naked eye. And they are the phytoplankton. And they're the jolly good fellas, and they're the jolly good fellas, and they're the jolly good fellas that no one can deny. Now, before I tell you why they're the good fellas, let's do a little exercise. Let's take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale. Let's do it once more. Inhale and exhale. No, this is not a yoga class of some sort, but that second breath that you just took came from the ocean. Because phytoplankton contribute to about 50% of the oxygen that we breathe. Now, just like the trees and plants on land, phytoplankton take up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and nutrients from water, and in the presence of sunlight, they produce food via photosynthesis. These tiny organisms make food for the entire marine ecosystem. Isn't that impressive given the fact that the plants and forests on the land weigh 450 times heavier than the phytoplankton all over the oceans? Phytoplankton take up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and when they die, this carbon sinks with them to the ocean floor, where it is stored for millions of years to come. But when we start producing faster than they can take up, it is a problem because carbon dioxide starts accumulating in the atmosphere. Now that we know that these organisms have a great role to play in our survival, let's get to know them a little better. They come in pretty unique shapes and it works. Helps them stay afloat, avoid predation. These diatoms are so marine. Use silica to build the glass houses of their dreams. There's more to this construct. Coccolithophones like spaceships from the outside. Just calcium carbonate shells they cried. Held them as chalks in our hands, and I love them when they're swimming all night long. Butterflies, let's cut my wool, 'cause they're gonna shine all night long. Now that we know some of the crucial functions that the phytoplankton perform and also how some of them look under the microscope, let me tell you what do we do. So in our lab, we study the phytoplankton and the food produced by them. We also look at how the changing environmental conditions like the increasing CO2 levels and the decreasing or increasing nutrient levels to the phytoplankton might affect them. What could these changes mean for the bigger organisms like fish that feed on phytoplankton? Now, to see that in action, let's go to the Arabian Sea and see how these tiny but mighty organisms control the distribution of fish. Now, if we were to go fishing along the west coast of India, we would see that fish like anchovies and mackerel are common in the south, closer to the Kerala coast. And as we start moving northwards, we see fish like Bombay duck, croakus, and ribbonfish start dominating. Now, the difference between these two groups of fish in the north and the south is in their diet. The fish in the north eat other smaller fish and are carnivores, but the fish in the south eat the phytoplankton directly and are plantivores. The difference in the fish along the west coast of India arises due to the different phytoplankton population in the north and the south. In the south, the phytoplankton have a lot more nutrient available to them, but the phytoplankton in the north have fewer nutrients at their disposal. As a result, in the south, they can utilize the nutrients and produce a lot of food and grow up to be bigger. Whereas in the north, the nutrients are limited and the phytoplankton are smaller. Since the phytoplankton are bigger in the south, they can be directly eaten by the fish. But in the north, the phytoplankton are really small. There are other smaller organisms that eat the smaller phytoplankton and then are ultimately eaten by the bigger fish. So you just saw that different kind of phytoplankton at the base of the food chain support different kinds of fish. And if the phytoplankton at the base of the food chain were to get affected due to some reason, it's only logical to assume that the fish that feed on the phytoplankton would get affected too. And guess what? With global warming, increasing carbon dioxide levels, and the excessive amount of waste that finds its way into the sea severely affects these microscopic organisms. Sometimes these new conditions are not favorable to the phytoplankton and they decline in numbers, and there isn't enough food for the fish. While at other times, the phytoplankton that the fish love to eat so much gets replaced by the harmful and the toxic phytoplankton because they perform well under the new conditions as they are quick to adapt. These toxic phytoplanktons are harmful for the fish. They affect them in several ways and even lead to fish mortality. In fact, we human beings can get affected too by eating the affected organisms. You must have heard about the shellfish poisoning, which is common along the coastal areas. So you can recognize that if this pattern of phytoplankton were to change in the Arabian Sea or anywhere in the world, it will come to bite us because about 1.5 million people in India are dependent on fisheries for the food and employment. Because this is like a domino. If one level suffers, everything else falls. So we have to be smarter about how we progress. Otherwise, we'd be stuck to singing. I'm waking up to ash and dust. I wipe my brow, I swept my rust. I'm breathing in the chemicals. So I hope the next time somebody mentions oceans to you, other than thinking about the waves and the big fish, you also think about these tiny microscopic organisms. Because as the famous oceanographer Sylvia Earle has said, no water, no life. No blue, no green. Thank you.